If someone looked at your search history, what would it say about you? Who the hell? Who the hell wrote this? Oh, you never ask somebody that question. That's like asking a woman their age. How dare you? Let me take you back for a second. I can remember the first time I saw something I definitely was not supposed to see. And I can remember sitting there and my brother was like, what is happening?
Please note that any opinion expressed on this show is my own opinion and does not reflect the opinion of my employer or any organization that I'm associated with or affiliated with for that matter.
Hey everyone, welcome back to A Sip with Samad. And of course, I'm your host, Samad. First of all, I want to apologize to those who may be listening and to those who are watching right now because it's allergy season, or we're at the cusp of allergy season, and 'tis the season to be sneezing. And I just want to apologize. If you hear me and I sound like I have something stuffed in my nose, it's because that probably feels that way too. But for those who are new to this space and for those who are true to this space, this is a show that centers conversations around masculinity, around Blackness, around queerness, fatherhood, leadership, all those things, right? And this season in particular, we're focusing in on conversations that men don't typically have the space and or the language sometimes to communicate about. And so with that in mind, I really want to just sit and ask you a question. So I'm going to ask you a question, right? Who taught you sex? Like not your health teacher, not your parents, not the abstinence pamphlet. But I really mean like who taught you sex? Because for a lot of men, porn wasn't entertainment. It was like curriculum. And the first teachers really matter. And so I want you to sit with that question. And so wherever you are, wherever you're doing, take a breath and let's take a sip.
Hey, kings and queens and everything in between. Welcome to this episode of A Sip with Samad podcast. And I'm your host, Samad. Let's jump in.
So you all know that I like to open up the conversations with just something for us to sit with and pour into it a little bit. And so here's what I want you to sit with today. For a lot of men, porn was their first sex educator. Okay. And nobody really asked, was it a good one? Like, let me take you back for a second. I can remember the first time I saw something I definitely was not supposed to see. My brother and I were looking for one of our favorite movies. And for all of my millennials out there, this will probably strike a chord with you. It was The Fox and the Hound. Me and my brothers love The Fox and the Hound. Me and Dew, my middle brother in particular, that was our favorite go-to. And so we were digging through tapes in this, wherever your family kept your tapes, excited. It was Disney night. We ate our oodles and noodles. And if my uncle is listening to this, do not say anything, right? Because we ate our oodles and noodles. Some of us had more juice than others because my brother, I convinced him that it was probably best not to have the juice, which it was now that you think about it, right? It was less sodium if we think about the sodium content of oodles and noodles. Nonetheless, Disney night. And instead of Bambi, it was The Fox and the Hound, right? And we found somebody's stash. We do not know whose stash it was. Still to this day, nobody's admitted it. My mother's since gone on. But it was midget porn, y'all. Now, let me just say, to this day, because of who I am and because of who you all learned of me being, I've brought this forward for community conversation to my mother and my uncle. They were the only two adults that were living in the house at the time. And so it couldn't have been my brother's or mine. So it had to be one of theirs. And my mother immediately said that it wasn't hers. And my uncle said that it wasn't his. And what I can tell you is that it wasn't The Fox and the Hound. All right. It wasn't The Fox and the Hound. But here's the part that matters, right? Regardless of whether or not it was The Fox and the Hound, nobody sat us down and nobody explained anything to us. Nobody said, hey, are you ready for this? We just stumbled into it, right? I really wanted to watch The Fox and the Hound. We wanted to watch The Fox and the Hound, but instead we stumbled on sex extravaganza. And I can remember sitting there and my brother was like, what is happening? I can remember him sitting there literally saying, what is happening? And we didn't really fully understand what we were seeing, but we just knew that three things. One, this was very interesting. This was very, very interesting. Two, we probably shouldn't be watching this. I just don't think that we should be watching this, right? But three, that we had just unlocked a secret level. It felt like Super Mario Brothers. Like we accidentally found this underworld, and it wasn't shame exactly. It was curiosity mixed with a little access. Like we had tapped into something that was hidden, and nobody tells you what to do with that. And so we just stopped the tape. And like any respectable Blockbuster user, we rewound it back to the exact spot in which we found it, because that's what we do. That's what we were taught. Shout out to the millennials out there, because if they marked it, we didn't want them to know, and we didn't want to get caught. We put it back, and we act normal, and we go back to being kids. That's what we did. That's what we did, y'all. But here's what I didn't realize at the time, right? When your first teacher is secrecy, you start associating sex with hiding, right? You start associating sex with performance. You start associating it with getting away with something, not with connections, not with love. And I didn't necessarily realize like how much that shaped me until very much later. Because when your introduction to sex is secret and visual, you learn how to watch before you actually learn how to connect. And then porn teaches you choreography. It teaches you pacing. It starts to teach you angles, and it starts to teach you what looks good. And what it does not teach you is how to ask. Watching porn didn't teach you how to slow down. Porn didn't teach you how to check in. Is everything okay? Are you enjoying this? Right? Like it didn't teach you how to be present. It didn't teach you how to respond. And I can remember in adulthood realizing something, right? There were moments when I wasn't fully in the experience. I was like trying to put on a whole theatrical production. I was trying to recreate something that I had seen, honestly. And for those who grew up at the time I grew up, we all know the brownstone in New York. For those, we all know that room. We were trying to recreate those grungy scenes. And so in trying to recreate something that I had seen, I was failing to be in the moment because I thought that that's what it was supposed to look like. And then I remember when I met Alan, right? And I don't even remember how the subject came up, right? But I can remember when he said, yeah, I'm not really into porn. And I can remember thinking, oh, well, that's a little different because once again, shout out. This episode is an ode to the millennials, okay? Because for those of us who were on, whatever Napster and other places where we received our resources, I can't fathom anyone saying that wasn't their thing. But anyway, I had probably seen more than I had at that point by the age of 11, because I not only grew up with magazines, I not only grew up with videotapes, I grew up with the advent of AOL. And so that alone just gave us access. The chat rooms gave us access, right? But it just was interesting that somebody would believe otherwise. But I could also remember him saying that he felt that it gave us a distorted view of what intimacy was supposed to be like. Right. I could also remember him saying that instead of being present and finding out what the other person actually likes, you're just trying to mimic something that seemed sensationalized. And it dawned on me. I mean, it was it was truth. And then when you're right, you're right. When you're right, you're right. And I say that because I can remember back in the day, you had to have the music, you had to have the candles. It was a whole scene because we were trying to mimic like something that we saw probably on Skinamax or other channels where you saw your stuff, right? I just never thought about it that way. And so because for me, mimicking, I guess it was fun and it felt confident and it felt bold and it felt like I knew what I was doing. But if I'm honest, I was trying to connect. I was not connecting, right? Because I wasn't being myself. I was trying to get it right because I thought that that's what was right. I was trying to perform well because I really thought that that was well. And I was also trying to look competent. That's wild because sex is supposed to be a connection. And meanwhile, here I am trying to make it a goddamn group project. Like, no lie. Like, I can think back to college and you know how you would hook up, you know, you would put your music on and you would dim the lights and you would try to set the scene and, you know, like it was like something in a movie. Like we were directing something, making sure that the vibe was right. We were making sure our soundtrack was right. I can remember it was like an arc. Okay. It was almost like, you know, you had to start with doom, 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 you know, start with a little flowetry. Doom, doom. And, you know, and it was a rainy night. Oh my gosh. Best time ever. And then you would go from flowetry and then you know, at some point, it would transition to the Yin Yang Twins. Hey, little mama, let me whisper in your ear, tell you some things you might like to hear. You like, that was a whole other vibe, right? But it was a journey. We were trying to mimic things that we saw. Honestly, we thought that that was the shit back in the day. Oh man, that just takes me back. Oh, those were vibes, memorable. I'm not gonna lie, they were cinematic, okay? But as you get older, right, you start realizing like, hey, ain't nobody... when you take the soundtrack out, when you take the performance out, when you start taking the scene out, you just left with a person. And sometimes presence feels quieter than performance, and it's less dramatic and it's less flashy and it's less choreographed, but it's also more connected and it's more honest, right? It's more honest if we're being honest. And so sitting in quietness is weird at first. I'm not even going to lie about that. I just even thinking about it makes me feel weird. I would say sitting in that quietness, you start questioning yourself. Am I doing this right? Is this enough? Should I be doing more? I think also because when you've been trained to perform, quiet just feels like you're failing. You're like, okay, you're trying to give show vibes here. And meanwhile, it's like, this is supposed to be a reflective. We're supposed to connect. And how are you connecting, though, if you're so busy trying to show off? But quiet isn't failure, right? It's intimacy. And that's the shift. And I think that's, you learn that, though, as you get mature. Once again, because nobody really taught us sex. Nobody taught us about this. We learned it by watching what? The pornos. And so, excuse me, you know, the effervescence of the Prosecco always gets me. I felt like I needed to give you a little Billy D on that one because, no reason. Anyway, this is where it starts to get interesting because I do think that my generation, we had secrecy, right? We had to go find it. We had to sneak it. We had to borrow it. We had to return it. There were whole porn sex rings when I was in middle school. And I'm sorry to have to tell on my friends, but I'm not going to give any names. I'm not going to say who was. So first of all, I'm about to call out somebody's grandmama. Hold on one second. Let me take a sip before I do that because you have to. You have to do this. For those of you who may judge the fact that we were in middle school and we had whole porn rings in terms of sharing tapes and videos, you participated in whole numbers rings back in the 50s and the 40s and the 20s and 30s. And so you can't judge me. But yes, we did share. And I would say this generation, I don't know if they really have to sneak, right? They can just scroll. They have unlimited access. They have infinite categories. I think they're infinite. Like they're infinite novelties. The only novelty I had growing up was Spencer's in the mall, where we thought that they were selling you Mama Wana, but it was really just sugar water. Okay. They have infinite escalations. They can double click, triple click, quadruple click into so many different categories of things. And here's the thing that nobody really talks about. When something is always available, your brain begins to adjust to it. Like, what was once exciting starts to become normal. I also think that what was once shocking becomes baseline. I think what was once enough isn't. And that's not a morality statement. Like, that's just like the brain. That's that's like neurology. That's like dopamine doesn't care about your intentions. It responds to novelty. And so the more novelty you feed it, the more novelty it will want. So I feel like I went into my nerd box for a second. So I want to say that plainly. When you're repeatedly exposed to a certain stimulus, i.e. porn, your body chemically adjusts. You talk about this, like we talk about this with social media, about how people are addicted to social media. We talk about children being addicted to games. We talk about people being addicted to food. We have shows on TLC about my 600-pound life, but we rarely talk about it with porn. But the same principle applies, right? And I'm not here to like police what grown people do. By all means, that is not what I'm trying to do. But I do really care. Well, I don't really care. I don't care what you watch and if you watch. The question isn't if it's bad. The question is, what is it shaping? Right? Because addiction doesn't always look like someone falling apart. Sometimes it looks like, I got to be a little late to this meeting because I got to handle something. Right? Sometimes it is, I need a minute. So this is actually a true story. I actually taught special needs at one point in time in my life. And there was a student that needed to break away and go and play whack-a-mole. But no, I like, no lie. Like, there was a student who needed to, like, he just could not function. And as a result of not functioning, he had to take a break. He said, I'll be right back in the middle of class. And so sometimes it looks like choosing screens over connection, escaping instead of engaging, right? Needing more stimulus to feed the same excitement. And you can be functioning. You can be productive. I think you can be successful. I think you can be married. You can be in a relationship and still be substituting access for intimacy. So the question shifts, right? Are you exploring or are you escaping? Because those are very different things. Needless to say, let me bring this all together for you because I felt like I've went a couple places today. If you've heard nothing else from me today, I want you to hear these three things. The first thing is that what introduces you to sex can shape how you experience intimacy. What introduces you to sex can shape how you experience intimacy. Antoine Fisher, we've seen this before. And I named Antoine Fisher because I feel like that was like one of the first times that I actually saw a depiction of a Black male and how his introduction to sex actually impacted how he formed relationships and how he was able to receive intimacy. That was the first time I saw that in my whole life. And so I named that for the brothers out there because I think we also sometimes think that just because the woman who was older than us may have touched us or, for all intents and purposes, raped us, it's a badge of honor, but instead it's how we receive or experience intimacy for all of our adult lives. The second thing that I want you to walk away with is that access does not necessarily equal intimacy. Just because you have the ability to get to it, it doesn't mean that it's feeding into you. It's close. You can have it. I mean, hell, you can have access to a prostitute, but that ain't your girl. You can have access to, strippers. It's not your girl. It's not intimate. You're still lacking. You're still without. And so just because you have it doesn't mean that you're still going to be left with that void at the end. And the third thing that I want you to walk away with is that fantasy isn't the problem. Look, I'm all about the fantasies. But I do think that unexamined formation is. And if you've never asked yourself what shaped your expectations, your pace, your performance, then you may still be operating from a script you didn't even write. All right. Now that we've laid that on the table, I want to move us to something a little bit more light and free. And that is the From Where I Sit segment. So I want to remind you, this is actually one of my favorite parts. The whole show is my favorite. But I just want to remind you all that this segment is not rehearsed. You actually saw that I was making sure that the damn questions were right here. That's why I looked down, y'all. I was like, okay, are the questions even there? Because I wasn't sure. These questions are questions that we filled from you all, our producers, collecting from you all on our YouTube channel and our other social media platforms. We ask you all to submit things that you think might be relevant to the show and this particular topic. I don't have a chance to review these, even though the producers insist that I do ahead of time. But they have asked me to please be a little bit more brief. And so I'm going to try to be a little bit more succinct in how I respond to these. But here we go into the From Where I Sit segment. All right. Let's see. The first question here is, do you think porn expanded your sexual vocabulary or narrowed it? That's an interesting question. Do I think porn expanded my sexual vocabulary or narrowed it? So I don't, the vocabulary part, I'm not going to go into, I'm not going to do that. They told me to be brief. What I will say is that my exposure to porn was limited, right? It was limited to what we could see, what we could get to. And so I think that in the initial phase, it was probably only held to what was around us. And that was my uncle's stash or my mom's stash or my, my friends and what we were sharing across each other. And so I do think that early on, it was narrowed. And then it probably in college, it was too, because it wasn't like we could go out and get it. We weren't going and buying it. So yeah, I guess it was narrowed, but it was more so narrowed because I couldn't go out and buy gay porn and I could find the straight porn. And this is so many layers to this question. They want me to make sure I'm succinct. Okay. And that's not fair. That is not fair. I'll say all that to say, yes, I do believe that it probably was narrowed because it was always based upon what I had access to. But also when you consider the queer factor, when you consider the factor of what you were interested in, like there were no sections for me to, where was I going to get it? I had to download it and then put my computer at risk of getting a virus. The next question is, did you have to unlearn from watching porn? I don't know. This question implies that I don't know what, I don't know if what did I learn? Yes. So did I have to learn how to be present? Yes. Did I have to learn that, I don't know, it was an unlearn. I think it was so early in that I was not so caught in my ways that I couldn't, like, I don't know if I was so learned that I had to unlearn, if that makes sense. I think I wasn't an old dog yet, so I could still learn some new tricks. That's my final answer. Yes. Let's see. The next question is, if someone looked at your, if someone looked at your search history, what would it say about you? Who the hell wrote this? Oh, Oh, you've never asked somebody that question. That's like asking a woman their age. How dare you? You don't ask me that. My grandmother watches this show. It would say that I can't answer. Move on. All right. It would say that I like confidence. It would say I like power. It would say I like blackness. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I got for you right now. Next question. Whoever sent that damn question is citation. All right. Let's see. Next question. So what does emotional intimacy mean to you versus physical intimacy? Emotional intimacy. What does emotional intimacy mean to me versus, I guess, physical intimacy? I think that emotional intimacy is actually more cerebral. I think that emotional intimacy, that's like that sapiosexual type energy, right? Like you have to get into my mind. In order to get into my emotions, you have to get into my mind. Where I think as physical is more carnal. I think physical is more, you're just pleasing the flesh. But I feel like in order to get to my emotions, you have to get to my like intellect. And those are separate. And so I think that because I've been in situations where I've had the physical act, but just felt like it was, all right, well, thank you so much. And so I think that that's the difference. That's at least that's what it means to me. I think for me, in order to be emotionally intimate, you have to, it's more cerebral, it's more elevated, it's more heightened. But I think that physical just addresses that physical touch, or that carnal, that immediate need. Whereas I think emotional is definitely more sustainable. And that's why you see a lot of people who may, get with somebody based upon the physical, but realize that they're an idiot or they don't even know a damn thing. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about nobody. So the question is, what are queer men getting wrong and right about porn and sexual intimacy? This is a very, very full and meaty question. And so thank you, producers, for picking this one out. And thank you, sippers, for submitting this. I do think that, I can't say what we're getting wrong, right? I can say what we're getting right is that we're being more visible about, well, I probably can have some opinions about what we're doing wrong. I'm not even going to lie about that one. I can say but I'll start with what we're getting right. I'll say what we're getting right is that we're being more expressive. We're being more open about what it is that we are finding to arouse us sexually. I talked about that on a previous episode, right? Men are becoming more fluid and expressive about themselves. I think that some of that has to do with the fact that a lot of queer men and how we express our sexual intimacy has been put out there on the forefront. Some would say that's probably a bad thing, but I also think that it's probably prompted some others to explore their own levels of intimacy and where they want to go. But on the flip side of that, I do think, and I can't speak for all queer men, and that's why I say this is a layered question. I feel that for Black queer men, I think that we have not been able to rise above the grunge. Like for some reason, when we are looked at sexually intimate or in an intimate space, it's always fetishized or it's always dirty or it has to be like rough. I don't know. It's something there. And so I don't know if we are feeding into the system or the system is telling us that that's what we need to be. But even when I see us on the various apps, I mean, I'm on X and I see all the people, and I live in Atlanta, hell. So I see it all. And so I do think that there is, we paint a picture of ourselves sometime, and I see how some of the white mainstream folks paint the pictures of what sexual intimacy looks like. And it's always different. And so once again, I don't know if it's us or if it's the system, but I definitely see a stark difference in what sells. And hey, maybe the grungy shit's selling. Anyway, look, that was the last question. So I am not here to shame curiosity by all means. And I am also not here to demonize access. And I'm definitely not here to act like I didn't grow up, like I said, rewinding the tapes to the spot in which you found them to make sure that you didn't get caught, or to act like I didn't unlock a few secret levels myself. But first teachers do matter. And so for some of us who got taught in the dark, I think that the most grown thing that you can do is admit that, this shaped me, and then decide like how you want to show up now. That's it, everybody. It's a wrap. I told you, I never have a good, clean way to end these. I'm leaning into I'm calling it my uncty phase of life. And I'm calling it that because we all have the auntie that can't wrap the conversation up. They just start it all over again. And I never want to end these conversations with you all. And so it's always hard for me to come to an end. And so for that reason, I just leave us at an awkward pause. But at any rate, if this episode sat with you, if it struck your nerve, if something said to you, damn, he got on my nerves, or it made sense. If you laughed, I don't know. If you liked it, do something, like it, share it, subscribe it, do something, right? Drop a comment on YouTube. Tell me what you think. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what you disagree with. And if you've already shared it, send it to somebody else. And if you've done that, tell them to share it again. But until next time, you all, it's been real, and I'm out.